The city of New Solace glowed under the silver lights of floating towers. The streets were busy with beings from 100 different worlds. Small hover cars moved quietly through the air, while neon signs in alien languages blinked across buildings. The world had changed since humans joined the Galactic Union. Some lived rich lives on new planets, but many others struggled to keep up in a galaxy that moved faster than they ever could. Among the crowd walked a tired man named Ethan Cole. His dark jacket was worn, his boots scratched and old. He pushed a small hover cart that wobbled as it floated over the uneven pavement. Inside it, wrapped in a soft old blanket, was his baby daughter, Lila. Her small chest rose and fell as she slept peacefully, unaware of the noise around her. Ethan looked down at her and smiled weakly. She was the only thing that kept him going. Her mother had passed away soon after her birth, leaving Ethan alone with a tiny life to protect. He had promised himself he would never fail her no matter how hard things became. But lately, that promise felt heavier every day. He had worked as a ship mechanic once, good with engines, patient with old machines. But after the war ended, most of the work was done by automatic drones and AIs. Human hands were no longer needed. For months he had searched for jobs, taking small repairs when he could, trading favors for food. His savings had vanished, and all he had left were a few old Earth coins. They were nearly worthless, but still accepted in the poorer markets. He reached a glowing store called Universal Mart, its bright glass doors opening automatically. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and strange spices. The aisles were filled with all kinds of goods, floating shelves stacked with alien foods, soft glowing fabrics from distant moons, and machines that could cook, clean, or heal. Ethan walked past it all, heading straight to the small section marked Human Baby Care. The label was dusty, almost forgotten. There were only a few products left: bottles, wipes, and a single pack of diapers. He picked up the diapers carefully, reading the price tag. His heart sank. It was more than he had. He reached into his pocket and took out his coins. Only one remained, a small silver piece, old and scratched, showing the Earth's faded symbol. He rubbed it between his fingers, feeling the cold metal. He knew it wasn't enough. Still, he carried the pack to the counter. The cashier was a tall insectoid alien, with a shiny black shell and long, thin arms. Its large yellow eyes blinked once as it scanned the item. The screen flashed red. "Insufficient funds," the cashier said in a dry voice. "Next customer." Ethan froze. His stomach twisted as a few customers behind him muttered impatiently. He looked down at his sleeping daughter. Her face was calm, her tiny hands curled in sleep. She had no idea her father couldn't afford even the simplest things for her. "Please," Ethan said softly. "There must be some mistake." "Can you just—" "No mistake," the alien interrupted. "You cannot pay." "Step aside." Ethan's face burned. He wanted to argue, but his throat closed up. He looked again at the pack of diapers. It wasn't much. Just a small comfort. But for Lila, it meant everything. He felt the sting of shame rise in his chest. He had fought in wars, repaired starships, faced danger without fear. But standing here, broken, helpless, was harder than any battle. He opened his mouth to speak. But before he could say anything, a gentle, calm voice spoke from behind him. "I'll pay." The words were soft, but they carried through the room like music. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Standing there was a tall woman with shimmering blue skin that seemed to glow faintly under the lights. Her eyes were bright silver, calm and steady. A long robe of white and gold flowed around her, and behind her stood 2 armored guards. The cashier's eyes widened. "The Empress Vethera," it stammered, bowing low. Gasps filled the store. Everyone knew the name. The Celestian Empress, ruler of one of the richest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. Her ships traveled farther than anyone's, her influence reaching across hundreds of worlds. And yet here she was, standing in a small market on a human street. Ethan froze. He had seen her on news broadcasts, always distant and untouchable, surrounded by luxury. Now she stood a few steps away, her expression calm and kind. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking. "You don't have to—" She lifted a hand slightly and the cashier fell silent. "No parent should ever have to beg for their child's needs," she said softly. "I will pay." The cashier quickly processed the transaction, bowing again and again. The diapers were placed carefully into a bag, and the Empress handed it to Ethan herself. He didn't know what to say. I can't accept this, he said weakly. I don't deserve. You are not taking charity, she said gently. You are receiving compassion. There is a difference. Ethan felt his chest tighten. No one had spoken to him that way in a long time. He looked at her again, unsure if this was real. The Empress knelt slightly, lowering herself to look at baby Lila. The child had woken up and was staring curiously at the bright colors of her robe. Lila reached out, her tiny hand brushing against the Empress's jeweled finger. A soft smile touched Erlen's lips. Such strong eyes, she whispered. She will grow brave like her father. Ethan's eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. Thank you, he said quietly. You don't know what this means to us. Perhaps not, Erlen said, standing tall again. But I know what it means to give when one can. Once long ago, someone did the same for me. I never forgot. The guards waited as she turned to leave. The other customer stepped aside, bowing respectfully. But before she walked out, the Empress paused and looked back. Tell me, Ethan Cole, she said softly. How long has it been since someone showed you kindness? He swallowed, thinking of all the hard days, the closed doors, the lonely nights. Too long, he said honestly. Erlen's eyes softened. Then let this be the beginning, she said. Not of debt, but of hope. And with that, she turned and walked away, her guards following in silent steps. The doors slid open for her, letting in a rush of cold night air and silver light from the streets outside. The store was quiet for several seconds after she left. The insectoid cashier cleared its throat and looked embarrassed. Ethan said nothing. He just stood there, holding the bag in one hand and his daughter in the other. As he stepped outside, he felt the night breeze brush against his face. Above, the twin moons of New Solus hung bright in the sky, surrounded by faint stars. The world still felt heavy, but something inside him had changed. The weight on his chest felt lighter, replaced by something warm and rare, something he had almost forgotten existed. He looked down at Lila, who cooed softly in his arms. You see that, little one? He whispered with a small smile. Someone still cares. He didn't know that the simple moment inside that small market was about to change everything. The Empress's words would travel farther than either of them could imagine. In days to come, they would reach across empires and spark stories of their own. But for now, Ethan simply walked home under the light of the moons, his baby sleeping peacefully against his chest, and the faint echo of the Empress's words lingering in his heart. I'll pay. Those two words would stay with him forever. They were not just a gift of money or help. They were a gift of dignity, a reminder that kindness still had a place in a vast, cold galaxy. And somewhere far away in her grand ship orbiting above the city, the Empress looked out at the stars. She thought of the human father and his small child, and for the first time in years, she smiled a real smile. She had seen countless worlds, ruled countless people, but that night she remembered what truly mattered. It wasn't power. It wasn't wealth. It was compassion. Weeks passed since the night Ethan met the Celestian Empress. Life still wasn't easy, but something had changed in him. Every time he looked at Lila, he remembered the kindness he had received from a stranger. No, not just a stranger, an empress. The memory gave him strength when things got difficult. He found small repair jobs in the lower districts, fixing broken cleaning bots or rewiring old air filters. The pay was little, but it was enough to buy food and keep Lila warm. Every night when he rocked her to sleep, he whispered stories about the stars and the people who lived among them. He wanted her to grow up believing that even in a cold galaxy, there were still good hearts out there. But one morning, as he was working on a broken hover bike, a group of soldiers in silver armor stopped outside his tiny workshop. Their armor carried the mark of the Celestian Empire. Ethan froze, unsure if he had done something wrong. The lead officer stepped forward and saluted him. Mr. Ethan Cole, the soldier said, by order of Her Majesty Empress Erlen Vithera, you are requested to come to the Imperial Dock. Ethan's mouth went dry. The Empress? He asked. Is this a mistake? The officer shook his head. She personally named you. You and your child are to come at once. He looked at Lila, who was sitting nearby playing with a small toy. He had no choice but to go. With his daughter in his arms, he followed the soldiers through the busy streets until they reached a shining transport ship, waiting at the edge of the city. The journey to orbit was quiet. As the ship rose through the clouds, Ethan stared at the blue planet below, thinking about all the choices that had brought him here. The soldiers treated him kindly but said little. When the transport finally docked, the doors opened to reveal a view that took his breath away. The Imperial Star Palace floated like a silver jewel in the dark. It was massive, built from crystal and light, with long bridges and towers that shimmered like ice. As he stepped inside, the air smelled clean and warm, and the floors glowed softly beneath his boots. He felt out of place among the elegant halls and floating gardens. A gentle voice greeted him. "Ethan Cole, I'm glad you came." He turned to see Empress Erilyn walking toward him, dressed in simple robes this time, her crown absent. She smiled, and it was the same calm smile he remembered. He bowed awkwardly. "Your Majesty, I didn't know why you called me." Erilyn looked down at Lila, who was now awake and staring up with wide eyes. "I wanted to see you both again," she said. "That night when I met you, it reminded me of something I had forgotten for a long time." Ethan looked confused. "Forgotten?" "Yes," she said softly. "I was once a mother too, my son. He died many years ago in an accident on one of our colony ships. After that, I buried myself in my work and ruling and politics. I thought I had to be strong, that feelings were a weakness. But seeing you holding your child with such love despite your pain, it brought something back to me." Ethan stood quietly. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't imagined that an empress could carry such sadness. She turned to look out the wide window showing the stars. "I realized that power means nothing if it cannot protect the helpless. Since that night, I've started a new plan, one that will help the poor and forgotten across every human colony. I want you to help me with it." He blinked in surprise. "Me, I'm just a mechanic," she smiled. "That's exactly why I want you. You know what life is like down there, among the people who struggle every day. You understand what they need more than my ministers ever could." He hesitated. "But I don't have education or rank. People like me don't belong in palaces." "Perhaps it's time that changed," she said kindly. For a long moment, Ethan stared at her, unsure whether to believe it. Then Lila reached toward the Empress again, smiling as if she already trusted her. Erilyn laughed softly and took the baby in her arms. "She remembers me," the Empress said. "Children never forget gentle hearts." And just like that, Ethan said yes. In the following months, Ethan worked with the Imperial Council as an advisor. He traveled between cities and colonies, meeting humans who lived on the edge of survival. He shared their stories with the Empress, and together they created a new program, the Light of Solace, to support families in need, giving them food, shelter, and jobs. For the first time, the galaxy began to notice a change. People whispered about the human who softened the Empress's heart. Some mocked him, calling him lucky or foolish, but many admired him. They said it was proof that kindness could travel upward, that even the smallest voice could reach a throne. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Ethan stood alone on a balcony of the Star Palace. The view stretched endlessly, planets glimmering like jewels in the dark sea of stars. He thought about his past life on Earth, the hunger, the cold nights, the loneliness. Now things were different. He wasn't rich or powerful, but his words mattered. People listened. He felt a quiet step behind him. It was the Empress. "You've done more in 6 months than most ministers do in years," she said gently. He smiled. "I just tell the truth. People want to be seen," she nodded. "And you've reminded me what leadership really means." She looked at the stars again. "Ethan, have you ever thought of returning to Earth?" He shook his head. "Earth isn't the same anymore, but I still carry it in my heart." He looked at her. "Why do you ask?" "I've been thinking," she said slowly. "The Union Council is meeting soon. I plan to open a new alliance between humans and Celestians, one based not on trade or politics, but on compassion. I want you to speak for humanity." Ethan's eyes widened. "Me speak for all humans?" "Yes," she said simply. "Because your story speaks louder than any speech I could write." He hesitated, his heart pounding. But when he looked at Lila sleeping peacefully nearby, he understood. He wasn't just speaking for himself. He was speaking for her future and for everyone like them. The day of the council came. Leaders from across the stars gathered in a great chamber of glass and light. Many had never seen a human before. Ethan stood before them, wearing a simple, clean suit, his hands shaking slightly. The Empress sat beside him, her silver eyes calm and proud. He began to speak, not with grand words, but with truth. He told them about poverty, about how small acts of kindness could change lives, about how power meant nothing if it ignored those below. He told them about a night when a father had nothing left but a coin and a hope, and an empress said, "I'll pay." When he finished, the hall was silent. Then one by one the alien leaders began to stand, clapping their hands, wings, or tendrils in approval. From that day forward, the Solace Accord was born, a galactic agreement to help the weak, protect children, and treat all species with fairness. Ethan became a symbol of hope, and humanity gained respect like never before. Years later, when Lila was old enough to walk, she would often run through the palace gardens while her father worked nearby. The Empress watched her with a warm smile, knowing the child she once helped had grown up surrounded by peace. Ethan never forgot where it all began. Sometimes late at night, he would hold that old silver coin in his hand and whisper, "One act of kindness can move the stars." And somewhere beyond the windows of the palace, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter, as if agreeing with him. Because in the end, it wasn't power that changed the galaxy. It wasn't war or wealth. It was a single moment of compassion. One human father, one baby, and one empress who chose to say 4 simple words that reshaped the future. "I'll pay."